Guys, it's Rachel with Pretty in Plants. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for visiting my channel. However, whatever button you push to get here, don't forget to subscribe. Right now, I'm only doing every other week shows, and the reason I'm doing that is November and December, your plants will slow down. They don't grow as quickly. Plants in general are, houseplants in general are just kind of going dormant, and we are so busy in our household with our 5 children, 3 animals, and a very hungry husband. The month of November and the month of December are exciting around here. So I go to every other week, and then I will start again at every week in January. So for the regulars, that's what I'm doing. I'm not leaving, I'm not going away. So today we're gonna be talking about additives and how, when, why, which additives I use for LECA. Now, I feel like we should start with the very basic thing, which is the LECA. There's nothing in LECA, it's clay pebbles. If you add any kind of volcanic pumice or volcanic perlite or volcanic, this is my most recent buy, is just lava that's been just crushed. This crushed lava, if you add that into your mix of LECA, either for stabilization, the perlite is really light and airy, and that can make roots that get root rot really easily get less root rot. You start with LECA plus a volcanic substance of some sort, like a small broken up pebble like that. That is the best way to start your journey with your plants. Now, people have been wanting me to make a lechuza pon and come up with a recipe. I don't know why. That for me, I haven't been very inspired about it. And I think it's because the pumice, let me do a for instance about pumice. Y'all know that a few weeks ago I did colored LECA, and I took my beautiful Thai constellation, variegated Thai constellation, out of its pot, and I put it in the colored LECA. Well, if you watched that show, you also know that it did not do well and was dry as a bone and starting to wither. So I took it out of that substrate and I put it into LECA and a little volcanic pumice, but in the same jar. Well, at this point, I think it had lost some roots. So now we're dealing with a smaller root system. It has not thrived in that jar. You can tell if something's not thriving. There's a little sign of root rot. You can see through the jar. I can see the rotting roots. The leaves, like when monsteras are either underwatered, overwatered, or not super happy, the leaves are just kind of like that. They're not firm, they're like that. So my Thai constellation, I knew I needed to deal with it. I haven't for 3 or 4 weeks. It's still living, it's fine. But I took it out, and it did have a lot of rotting roots, but the other thing it had were these huge, giant, juice, plump, new roots, all growing into the volcanic pumice. It absolutely loves the pumice, like every one of my plants. So I will say, to set yourself up for success, mixing in a little lechuza pon or a little volcanic pumice is going to not ensure, because you can overwater and kill your plant just like any other thing, but it will help you on the road to success. So I repotted it, and what should you do if your plant is in this huge thing of LECA and the root ball is more like this size? Go way down on your pot size, bury those roots an inch above the LECA, and it should be better. If it's sad and suffering and it's high up in the pot, which I had done, and the roots are, and it's funny because the reason I did that is the monstera grows so quickly, I have to repot it once a month. So I thought, oh, it'll be fine if I do it, and I'll just kind of water it. But it doesn't do as well, even if it has a huge root system and you repot it. I think it still likes to be kind of close to the bottom. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, when I'm drying out the roots, so when I'm very at the beginning, and this is for a lot of you have figured out, if I take any plant out of dirt and I just put it in water for a month, it'll start growing water roots and then it will transition much more easily to leca. Kudos to y'all for figuring that out. However, I did not do that. So I went from dirt to leca and learned a lot along the way. But the other thing is I didn't start with baby plants. I started with huge plants, 8-foot trees, took them out of dirt and put them into leca. So, and I have been quite successful doing it. So I'm trying to share exactly what I did. When I take a huge thing out of dirt and wash the roots, I put it into a bowl of warm water and with a couple of tablespoons of Epsom salt and just stirred that in. I also did a pipette of Super Thrive, and I also did hydrogen peroxide, a couple of tablespoons of hydrogen peroxide, just because it had had some root rot. We want it to forget that that even happened to it. So right when I'm transferring, and again, this depends. If you're going from water, the plant's been in water, to leca, what I would do from water to leca is I do allow the roots to dry out on the counter. I spray the roots with Super Thrive, and then I plant them in leca 1 inch above the bottom, fill the rest with leca, and then I may wait a day or two to water them. Once you put them into leca, now it's in a substrate, just like you would put it into dirt. So no longer do you drown the roots, you allow them to dry out and get some oxygen. But I do those things, the Epsom salt, sometimes, a lot of times if I'm doing the Epsom salt, it's because it's a really big tree. I really want to prevent shock and stress. Actually, if I picked one thing for that instance, I would do the Epsom salt bath for about 6 hours, and I would do several tablespoons in the water. Okay, so now it's in the leca, and you are going to just water the pot through, unless it's a peace lily. They like to have a reservoir right away. It is the only plant so far that I found that likes the reservoir right away. Other plants, you want to give plenty of light, warmth, humidity for about a month, plain water, no water, whatever. When you do water it, you're going to water through and not leave a reservoir for 4 to 6 weeks. That's until you see signs of growth, signs of happiness. Now you can give it a little reservoir in the bottom. When it's time for the reservoir in the bottom, that is when you can introduce your nutrients, and it's a teaspoon per gallon of Foliage Pro or Grow. Both of these are put out by the same people. Okay, now the question that people have is after this, let's say you have a culture of leca in your house. I've had my plants now for a year and a half. In the leca, 140 houseplants. They're thriving, happy, doing well. So when do I introduce the next level of care? So we have the Ciba Blue here. Let me see him. Ooh, see, dry as a bone. Dry. Lots of roots, no water. Does he look stressed? He actually looks pretty good. Okay, dry as a bone. Finally start telling me he has a problem, but he's just waiting. He's just having his dry period. So I'm gonna go ahead and just water him. Now, if I notice on the top of his pebbles, white crystals, I'm going to leave this cache pot inside of the pot, and I'm gonna fill it to the top, or at least to the top of the leca, with distilled water or reverse osmosis water for about an hour. I always set my timer for an hour, and then I pour off the water, and then I just leave them for a week. This will completely eradicate all crystals. If you see crystals on the top, that is fertilizer your plant has rejected, and it also means there's probably crystals on the roots, and it will be a problem. It'll start affecting your plant. So if you want to flush your plant, the only time I flush if I visually see the crystals. Otherwise, I never ever flush my plants. Okay, so The next thing I like to do is if you see curling leaves, if you see your plant normally gets really dark green growth and the green is getting lighter, if you see signs of stress and it's not totally explained with the overwatering thing, because that's the #1 problem, then I like to spray with Epsom salt spray. And I just take 2 tablespoons of Epsom salt and I will put it in a gallon of water and put that in my spray bottle. And then your treatment is the underside of the leaves of the plant. Now, you're making salt water, so it can be kind of sticky. People complain about this because they were spraying their whole plant. Your plant will absorb the magnesium from the Epsom salt water magnificently. You can spray the trunk. If there's a trunk on your plant, the leaves, every part that you spray, it will absorb it. I have found I'm doing it about once every 3 months. And once I load up my spray bottle with Epsom salt spray, I go ahead and go around the house and do everybody. This will keep your plant super happy. Peroxide, you're gonna bring back into the game when you know there's root rot and you don't really want to deal with it. So I kind of use this on my ficus trees because they are so large. If I accidentally overwater them, they tell me right away. They'll get some root rot looking leaves. That'll help. Hydrogen peroxide is another super cheap miracle in a bottle. So what it does is it boosts the oxygen in your plants like receptors, and it's like a facelift. I mean, if you want your plant to have a facelift, add some hydrogen peroxide to the water. You don't have to add a whole lot. It boosts the O2 in your H2O, and so it helps the plant it kind of resets the plant. My plan, because I've been doing this for a while, for the hydrogen peroxide is 2 times a year, spring and fall. Add it to my regular water that I'm watering my plants with, and all of my plants are going to get a little H2O2 boost. Is when do you use the Super Thrive? When do you bring that in? I actually don't. I love Super Thrive for propagations, and like I used it yesterday because I was soaking my Thai constellation, and I did a little pipette of, some drops of Super Thrive in the water. If I cut up a plant, put a bunch of leaves and pieces or nodes into a propagation station, I will definitely, and y'all need a pipette with your Super Thrive, definitely put 4 drops or 2 to 4 drops in the little propagation station. It will really help those roots take off faster. I do this mainly for the roots. So for me personally, I use the Super Thrive at the beginning part. The only time I introduce it later on is if I'm feeling just a little nervous about a plant, I'll add a couple drops to my water. But my plants are pretty happy, satisfied, steady Eddie. And once we do that first treatment, I really don't use it again. I did use it. I have a live Christmas tree. I did use a big pipette in the Christmas tree water. It'll help your tree live longer. The last tip is if you have a fish tank, and if you have a fish tank, you probably already know this, but when I change the water in the fish tank, I dip a carafe down into the tank. I get out a couple of gallons of the water, and then I immediately turn to the plants that are closest and I water with the fish tank water. And it has tons of nitrogen in there and lots of little goodies that your plants will like. And I have no problem watering my LECA plants with fish tank water. So I think that's it. If y'all have any questions about today, definitely let me know. Can't wait to see you in 2 weeks. I want to do a tour, a Christmas tour. So I'm hoping that will be the next show. Love y'all. See you next time. Bye-bye.